back once again with the pastor
and the professor.
Nothing to play with, real talk, real action, real righteous, and we getting real deep into this. So if you were tuning in on Ustream, then you caught a lot of what we were just discussing. We hope we could bring it back up. But there's a couple of things we want to do with this last segment. First, we want to make sure that we're shedding some light, not just on those who may be doing some of the negative things and maybe getting caught in the media and projected with a certain level of sensationalism, but there are some people who are doing some very substantial work. Sister Laura talked about some of them right before we went to break. I also want to bring up the Memphis School of Servant Leadership, who are doing some classes, race and reconciliation classes. Shout out to my homeboy Billy Vaughn, who is a social justice advocate, a United Methodist pastor. Shout out to Binghamton United Methodist Church. But in fact, and Laura asked me about this over the break, in the month of April, Abyssinian Baptist Church will be partnering with St. Mary's Episcopal Cathedral to have some conversations around race in sacred communities. But in light of all of this, and I'm sure Laura and G also have some organizations that they want to shout out as we continue to go forward. But there seems to be, in the theme of our conversation, some tension around certain notions of being progressive. Like, progressive seems to be the new catchphrase that people use to to hide notions of oppression in a sophisticated fashion. So I'm wondering, like, for instance, if we're arguing stuff like post-racial theory today and other notions of progress, many people, and y'all know this, are shocked at the fact that there is still today a name of a group that we said we weren't going to say anymore on the show. So A, how do we reconcile this reality? B, what do we understand about their rights in terms of protesting, right? And C, what do we do in order to try to recapture a more, as we've been talking about at the beginning, holistic understanding of history and how to tell a story that would hopefully lead to some legitimate progress, whatever that is.
Right. Well, just to take your point A, or your question A, I think that the idea that people could be shocked that there still exists this group, for example. I think, again, I want to come back to intersectionality, because I think a lot of times people who think that we live in a post-racial society are cut off in relation to class. I think they're the same folks that we could drive around not too far from here at all and show them the reality of people's lives. And they would be like, oh my gosh, or show them the statistics about what's happening in this city, the number of people who live below the poverty line, the unemployment rate, incarceration rates, and when you factor in, demographics and how that plays out racially, I was saying to you during the break, we should all be equally, if not more, outraged at those injustices as we are at the KKK and the history that it represents. They're not unrelated. And then I think what you were talking about progressivism and how that kind of gets appropriated. We live in a time where this era of capitalism, neoliberalism, has this ideology of giving back and volunteerism and all these things. And not to say that those things aren't useful, but we need to understand the larger context, where right now large corporations love to brand themselves by saying they're a socially responsible business.
Right.
But it's actually about the replacing of the public with the private. So you have, like, Target gives money to schools, and we think, I'm going to go shop at Target. Why are we protesting that so much damn money has been taken away from our schools? Do you know what I mean? And our city leaders do the same thing, where we have a plan to gentrify the Vance Avenue area. Was called Triangle Noir. Won't even get into how horrible that was, but after 3 years they changed it to Heritage Trails. And you know what they want to do? They want to kick out all the poor black people who live in that neighborhood, and they want to create this fake Disney-fied version of history, this African American heritage tourism site. They actually want to put up a statue at the site of Foot Homes after they tear down the last remaining public housing in the city and put up a statue of Martin Luther King there, which I personally find
repugnant.
Yes, totally. So, but that's what we have to look at, how folks who run the city are running it like a business. That's the neoliberal model. So they do the same thing, where they have this patina of helping people or being progressive, but actually never addressing the real issues and having whole sections of the population that don't count.
Which I think was part of G's point earlier that I can concur. That is not just, that's not new, that's not neoliberalism, that is the American way. which is part of the story that we need to tell.
But we did have more of a Keynesian safety net pre-Reagan. And when I say neoliberal, I mean an economic model. I'm talking about the ideology that goes along with it. Because that's been ramped up to such a great degree.
Yes.
I mean, in the 70s, we used to believe that there needed to be something called public service.
And then at the same time, I want to once again do this back to the topic at hand, the Klan at hand.
The Klan at
hand. The Klan at hand. I just rhymed. See, I'm a stereotype. I can rap Klan. How do we, as far as, we got to deal with the fact that what could happen on Saturday. Hopefully, it's not going to be doomsday or anything of that nature. But I think, of course, we all need to know, the audience watching, those of you that will watch, and I guess this show will probably air on YouTube channel next week, so you get hopefully the news will be out, hopefully nothing will happen, but we got to promote some type of anti-violence. We don't want people to go. I want people to understand that you don't go there to protest the Klan. This is not to protest the Klan. You're protesting the name change. You're for the name change, and you think it might be disrespectful of black heritage or the black citizens that helped build this great city of Memphis. Protest that. Be oppositional to that, not opposition to the Klan. This is not your time to go out and become a combatant of the Ku Klux Klan, because if what they say, their pretense for coming is
have a right
great.
To do that.
They have a right to protest.
That's right.
And they're coming in peace, so they say.
Yeah, so they
now
say.
We know they've been a domestic terroristic organization since the 1860s, right? But we hope if they say they're coming for peace, you go for peace as well, and just go protest the idea at hand and not the idea of the Ku Klux Klan. That's very important. But I want to deal with, because we're in the last segment of the show, what do you think can be accomplished as far as there's something bigger than these names, right? There's something bigger in Memphis besides these names, and we were discussing the economic disparities, right? Wage disparities between blacks and whites, or blacks and non-blacks. What can be done to really get at the root cause of, I guess, racial injustice, not only in the South, but all over the United States of America? Memphis is just a small microcosm of what's going on in the United States of America. And I think we've gotten caught up here with the Klan coming and the name changing, And it's funny that I've heard white people on different blogs and what have you, the Commercial Appeal, the local major newspaper, the comment section, WRUGR, local network, television news networks. A lot of the white people are saying that, well, we shouldn't have a civil rights museum here in Memphis, or they should name this after Dr. King, or Martin Luther King Boulevard, all of that. Do you think that some of these people feel like their history is being threatened? Because I'm still on the side of, I don't like revisionist history. And I understand what they're saying, because if that's the case, now that we've delved into on this show who is Nathan Bedford Forrest, they could easily take it down, but I think they knew why they were putting him up there. But wouldn't that be kind of wrong to revise history? Because changing the name is not shit, right? Take this big-ass statue down, monument with the man on top of the horse that was a slave trader, if you really want to do something. The name means shit, the monument still stands, right?
Yeah.
And it was erected after his death. So they meant to do that. So how do we get at, like we talked about earlier in the show, how do we get at trying to come to some type of idea of truth? And we know truth is only going to be in the eye of the writer, right, of history. So it's going to be numerous different truths. So how do we get at that without glorifying, as Earl mentioned earlier, and deifying these particular figures? Because apparently this is deification at its best, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with internalized oppression, and I think that people on both ends of the spectrum need to be willing to deal with that piece. So I'll elaborate on what I mean by that. So white people don't feel great about themselves, and that is a piece of why white people participate in racism. And it has to do in part with what you were talking about earlier. During the Civil War, for example, slavery times up through the Civil War, and even afterwards, that poor white people were in between and made to feel better about themselves by being given a group lower than them to feel better than. I would argue that people have to be really brutally hurt to participate in those systems of oppression. And so when I can't really read the comments on the Commercial Appeal site because I get so angry. I just, the emotional side of me just doesn't get it. The intellectual side of me, I'm starting to try to understand where those people are coming from, not in any way to justify it, but how bad do you have to feel about yourself that you are invested in either denying racism or the racist history of certain elements of history, or constantly participating in it again? It's not an equivalency to say we're going to name a street after Martin Luther King Jr., who fought against exploitation and racism and fought for social justice on all these levels, versus having a park and a statue named for
slave trade, yeah.
Again, where do people fit in terms of, are they supporting oppression or are they liberating it? Again, knowing that that's not as clear cut as we might think. And then to flip it around to say, we all have to have real conversations about these things and want to address these things together and understand that people of color also have internalized oppression. And so to look at how for example, how black people can be pitted against each other based on class. So we have, so to me, we've got to bring that element in. We live in a society that is based upon a structural inequality that needs oppression to keep happening and needs us to be divided as much as possible. And so I think we have to do two things. We have to get together and connect and work through our shit on personal levels and our internalized oppression, and we have to not stop there. We have to understand how that is related and helps keep in place institutional oppression, and our efforts to fight institutional oppression are going to be a lot more successful. Pulling this back around to your question about what's going to happen on Saturday and violence and people's motives for going down there. I mean, people are sitting on a cauldron of feelings in this city, and especially around race.
Powder keg. Basically.
And
Can I tell you what one of my mentors called it? She said we always talk about Southern hospitality. I've told you this. She's this Reverend Dr. Valerie Bridges.
I knew you were going to say her.
Yeah. She said that you always talk about in the South that there's Southern hospitality, but in essence, what it is a thin layer of hospitality over a thick layer of hostility.
Yeah. So I think we've got to have places for people to go and release and process and work through the deep rage, the deep grief. I mean, I realized today, just thinking about this show, that even though I'm part of a group that's planning an event to work on fighting racism and other social justice issues, I have been functioning on top of my feelings for weeks ever since this news came out. And I realized that it's all right here. I could burst out and start sobbing right now if I really allow myself to think about what this symbolizes, what these folks coming symbolize, because they are symbols of a reality, a material reality.
Yes. Well, I think, and the funny thing about racism, it's a very small nuance of the hierarchical structure of classism.
Yeah.
You had to have, race is just a form of class.
A means
Before the Negro got here in 1619, and I know people that are watching, and you scholars and you great intellects, they're going to research every fucking thing I say. Oh, the blacks were on the slave trip with Columbus and all that. Well, I'm going with modernized history, 1619, when we got to Jamestown, Virginia. It was easy to have a class based on, now you had an identifiable class. A white person could dress up in a tuxedo, eat a certain thing or drink a certain thing, and you might think they're part of the aristocracy, right? But now you had a class of people that could be identified by their aesthetic look, right? So I think racism is a small, nuance of that whole structure of, like you say, oppression. George Orwell's Shooting the Elephant, I love it because it always talks, the whole piece is about how the oppressor oppresses the oppressed, of course, but the oppressed wants to become the oppressor. Right. And I think those whites that you're talking about, I'm not even sure they're even realized. I'm almost positive half of those Klan members that are going to be here, I'm not sure I don't think they're coming down saying, we believe, most people think, well, they want slavery back. I'm not sure that's it either. I don't think they're coming for that. I don't think they're coming glorifying that he was a slave trader. He's one of the heroes, one of the first founding members of the Klan, and I think they feel like they're being robbed of something because they're looking at between the affirmative action, between Reconstruction, between the Civil Rights Movement, the affirmative action babies of the 70s and the 80s, and the election of a black president. You niggas are equal now. Let us have our history, and you're not going to take our history from us. And that's what I think they're coming for. I'm not sure they're coming on this. This gonna be stupid. I'm not sure they're coming on the racist tip this time. I think they're just coming, trying to preserve what they consider their place in history. Right. I think that's what they're doing.
Which may, in essence, by default, associate them.
It's definitely associated with racism.
And so I want to be clear about why I plan to go. So I plan to go because, in light of what we're talking about, that certain people just can't even believe that a Klan still exists. I'm curious to know.
Who didn't believe that?
Wow. People like, huh, it's still a Klan? If you hadn't heard that.
And it's huge in Indiana and your Midwest areas.
Right. So a couple weeks before this notion of what's going on with the hoods came up, I was preaching when I was at Abyssinian, and I said, that they cannot wear hoods or cannot wear masks. Because what I was saying was, if somebody is very passionate about a particular cause, then take the mask off, right? Okay. And so I'm going down to see who is actually willing to be identified with a group that, even if they're not, to your point, racist by intentionality, are going to be associated as racist by proxy. And I want to know who has the audacity to show up without a mask and say, yes, I support the Klan. And that'll be interesting for me. So I'm going down there.
But we won't know them because it won't be the local Klan.
Well, but you don't know. Number one, we don't know.
Aren't they out of
it's groups coming.
Arkansas,
So with the journalist who we talked to, he says he interviewed groups that may be coming basically no more than about 100 miles away, right? And so what he says is that, in essence, you may have people who travel from, let's just say, Jonesboro, Arkansas, who think that they're coming to Memphis and going to have some anonymity. But they will not, because
they can't wear their hoods.
Exactly. And you just never know whose cousin or aunt or nephew, like, that's so-and-so, such and such, or that's so-and-so who we did the Comcast work for. And so I'm just interested to see who may
It sounds like you're going to be there witnessing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and I think that's important.
And not only witnessing, but trying to bear witness to my objection to revisionist history, is what you're talking about.
I know I won't go simply because I'm more concerned with those that have the sentiments of the original Klan that are running our city and the hands behind the black puppets and the white puppets. I'm more concerned
that will not show up down there.
Because they're not a part of that Klan.
They're
a different
I got
Klan.
you.
I'm more concerned with those people.
The Klan 3.0.
The invisible hand than I am those tobacco, snuff
skinhead.
I'm not really concerned about them. I'm not going to give them that type of press. I've always wanted to. I would like to go, but I have prior engagement, Easter egg hunt with my son. I'm not really looking.
Easter egg hunt at Abyssinia start at 12. I'll be there after I lead the Klan rally.
I don't think it's a. I just don't think it's a. I don't think it's a good idea for some black. Most people aren't going to come down with your idea. I just believe we need to be more. I'm not concerned about the ones in them white robes. I'm more concerned the ones in them black robes that the mass incarceration of black Americans that have that ideology up here. I'm more concerned with them. The ones that the ones that just want, and they don't want their history to be revised either. Because to take the name away is one thing. To take the monument away would be a bigger incident, and would be a bigger voice for the city to say, we're trying to get past of all of this. But I think if the ones that are coming and saying, look, they, just like you said, you're a proponent of truth in history.
Yeah, as much as we can.
And I believe they are too. Because once again, this is a place, this is a city that was based around guys like Forrest. People set up shop here in Memphis. Memphis was really a saloon type of town that became a big city, one of the meccas of the South. Prostitution, gambling. You had these white racists that were behind the scenes running it. You had a lot of malicious Negroes that were making thousands upon thousands of dollars off of this thing. And so
much money
to change this, this is still revising history.
But I think there's.
To me.
I can't remember who wrote it, but there was a really good op-ed in the Tri-State Defender about the naming of the park. And one of the points in the article was saying, it's one thing just to think about the facts of history and not want the facts to be revised. It's another to think about values. And so history is not static. So, when this statue was put up, this reflected the values
at the time.
Of the people in the town.
1877.
And so to me, I see changing the name and removing the statue, or however this gets countered, as some of the city leaders saying, we don't support these values
any longer.
Our values have changed. Now, that may be a hollow promise, given that they don't necessarily lead the city in a way that reflects that, to follow that through, the implications in what you were saying. And I agree. I'm very much concerned about the leaders in the city and what they're doing or not doing, and how we can get together. It's going to be a multi-year, probably multi-decade project to rebuild the grassroots in this city. But people are finding each other every day, and more and more people are a lot less naive about what's really going on, where the resources go.
I got a feeling. Funny thing about it is, and I know we're getting towards the end of the show, but I don't think it's going to be a bigger turnout by the Klan nor by the protesters of the Klan's arrival in Memphis. I think it's going to be fly under the radar.
I don't know if you know, there's a group of folks who's been wanting to plan a confrontation with the Klan, and they have a Facebook page, and they planned a rally on March 15th. I heard two different
April
stories.
15th?
No, March 15th. They had a kind of pre-rally.
Okay.
Yeah, and their rally had either, I've heard two accounts, 6 or 12 people. It was called a mass rally. Okay. But I don't know how many folks are going to show up heeding their call. But I will tell you that from the Facebook comments, it seems that so many people are coming from all these other states, and they seem very adventurous. You know, it's like, hey, here's a chance to go throw down and confront. But they would never come here to fight around these issues that we're talking about that decimate people's lives every bloody day, right? So that bothers. No, it really bothers me. It's I don't have respect
and
for
really
that.
the protest won't help. I want to sit down with those Klansmen. Like, I'd like to have a dialogue now. I would go there if we could all sit down and dialogue. There won't be any dialogue going around with them on one side, us on the other. I would like to sit down and talk. I've always wanted to talk with a member of the Klan. I would like to have a dialogue with them about the renaming of these different parks that can be kind of insensitive to black people.
Did you know there's a few folks who were in the Klan who gave up their racist ways, some white people who are actually part of helping plan the Memphis United event? And I haven't gotten to know them very well yet, but I find it really interesting. And I also thought it was very courageous that they could just come out and be very forthcoming. This is my history. Can I participate in this?
Are we still? There you go.
And God said, "Let there be light."
Are we still recording?
I believe so. I know at least we on Ustream. So, well, either way, let's wrap it up. We hate to have to sign off because this is such a complex and multi-layered and multifaceted issue that it would take us actually, you know, as you were talking about earlier, weeks of conversation and dialogue with so many different people and so many different perspectives to even scratch the surface of the realities of it. But at least we want to try to leave people with hope, saying if you are doing the type of work that is at its core an effort to rebuild communities, to liberate people who are oppressed, then keep doing the work. Keep doing the work. So we want to shout you out. We want to give you some props. We thank you for the work that you do. And
appreciate you coming out, Laura.
Oh man, I love talking to you guys.
So we hate to have to sign off, but it is the pastor
and the professor. He got to get to Scandal. I'd be here all night if I wanted to.
Hey, catch me Twitter, me and wifey, Scandal Thug, and you hear me.
Next week,
are you Team Fitz?
We'll get right back at you. The pastor, professor, same Mac time, same Mac channel. Peace to the righteous. We out.